I was a maniac mother doing all the exercise. I wanted an A++ on our report card for therapy. And I was going to have the best kid. You probably got one too, didn't you? I don't know. But there was a moment where I suddenly realized that I wasn't looking at his face anymore. I was only looking at his arms and legs. And that was a terrible moment. I thought, oh my gosh, this is my baby. Like, he was only 3. And I thought, he's not my project, and I don't care if he gets an A+, and I just sort of really got very upset at that moment because I didn't want to be that kind of a mother, So I think, I did pull back, but I think there's certain gut level ethical choices that you make based on what you think is the right path for therapy for your child, which is why when you talk about therapy with parents and therapists, it's like talking about religion. So we made a choice to do something called conductive education with Nicholas. And the therapists at the treatment center, some of them, thought it was insane. And it was interfering with the neurodevelopmental treatment that we were doing at the treatment center. And we had to sign a paper saying we wouldn't pursue any other forms of therapy, which I signed and then went right ahead and did conductive education. But I knew other families that were doing patterning or Domen Delicato with their kids. And I just thought, wow, I never do that. And that doesn't make any sense. But so I think, I still felt that I had a right to make a choice about those kinds of therapies, that we should pursue them to the best of our ability as a family, to give Nicholas, hope for the future. Part of it was the AT&R positioning that he had, He wasn't exactly like Christ on the cross, but I thought, for some reason I had that in my head, that it's this, like you say, it's the turning away all the time. And I wanted people to see his face. I wanted people not to see him as tragic. I thought of that they would see him as tragic if he was stuck in that AT&R position, and not least because he did look almost Christ-like in that position, And I don't even know if I've ever actually said that out loud before, that was an idea that was in my head. But I did want him to be able to turn his head, and I wanted him to look at me. And he was often looking up. He still looks up to listen, to screen out the visual information, because he has a cortical visual impairment. So he's often looking up to listen. But I wanted him to look at me. I wanted him to see me. And I certainly wanted to see him. So bringing him to midline was very important for all of those millions of reasons. That was the moment.
Right.
I said, and that I am not a clinician, and it is not my job as, because we are nurses, we are therapists, we are all of these millions of things. And certainly as his mother, it was my job to do his exercises with him. Nobody else is going to do that. So, however, I needed to realize that I'd gone too far into that territory of clinician. And that I needed to understand that is not what I was supposed to do. I was supposed to bring together my role and as mother, and sort of always have that as the umbrella role, and just slot these other roles underneath. It is my experience, but I think it's very fair to give other parents a warning about it. You know, with the caveat that this might not be your experience, but watch out, because it's so easy to flip into that when you're going to therapy 4 times a week, and therapy really is your life, and every single hope for your child's future is pinned to that therapy. So it's really easy to slip into becoming clinician instead of mom.
Well, and everybody around you's so invested too. So you get this little cheerleading
Yes.
group at the clinic that cheers you on for being such a hard worker.
Yes, yeah, and you know, of course, I think in those days there was an understanding that was completely unspoken, of course, but one that I had, that the harder I worked on therapy was a demonstration of my love for my child. That is my expression of love for him. And I think that's, you know, that holding him for an hour instead of doing therapy, you know, exercises, wasn't a good enough expression of love, and that it was, you know, a betrayal of our hopes, aspirations, and our promises to do those exercises with the therapists and all of that. So I think, you know, I know that it's not other people's experiences. I've talked to so many parents that I'm always amazed at how different people's experiences are. But I think it's very fair that it's common enough to make it extremely valid to say you really have to be careful of this, because it's an easy trap to fall into.
Did you ever feel that your clinicians were keeping an eye out for you in that respect, or
No, absolutely not. No.
Leading question.
Yeah, no. I mean, I would say the converse is the truth. I mean, I remember one time, actually, when Nicholas was in a preschool for conductive education. Mind you, it was a bit like a boot camp. So it was very intensive, full-day program for preschool level children. And we were supposed to do tons of work at home, and constant practicing. And I remember they were particularly kind of rigid and a bit outrageous, really, in their expectation of families in the amount of work that you would be doing at home after a full day of school for a 3 and 4 year old who is very, you know, has a severe disability. And I remember I just got really upset one day, and I just thought, how on earth? Because I had another child and other people had other children too. And there was a parent night where they showed a home film of one of the mothers and what she did with her child. And she stood up and gave a speech about this is what she does in helping her child brush her own teeth. And it was intense. And I got quite upset. So the doctor that did the nerve blocks explained that they would be injecting a solution called phenol into the major nerves feeding his hips. And that phenol kills the nerve roots, and the nerve would then be dead. Mm-hmm. I understood from that that he would have no sensation. What happened was the phenol kills the nerve root, but it travels down and it will damage the nerve pathways further down. Well, that I did understand that that could be a possible but unlikely outcome, and it did happen to Nicholas. So he got that, which was a really catastrophic outcome. However, with respect to the hips, because I was lifting him, and when I flexed his hips, he went, I thought the procedure had failed. It needed to be redone because the nerve root is supposed to be dead. I didn't understand that there are multiple nerves, and he's never not going to gasp when you bend his legs. And they knew that that was a reality from the get-go, but they never articulated that. So I think that that is a really good example. And I was a seasoned parent. Remember, Nicholas had had multiple hospitalizations. We were lifers in the hospital. I lived in the hospital. So I knew all the lingo. I knew all the personalities. I nodded my head like I understood. I did.
Well, you understood to the extent that you thought you understood.
Exactly.
Right.
I thought I understood.
Right. And they thought you understood because you were nodding.
Yes, yes.
So there was a lack of exchange.
There was a lack of exchange. There was, and you know, there was a minute understanding. There was not a broad understanding of
a minute understanding in that we're going to inject this, and then he's going to recover, and then he's going to need this, and then so the logistics were clear.
We didn't really discuss at all what really happens if this negative outcome of damaged nerves occurs. We didn't discuss what happens then. How do we deal with that? We did not discuss what will his days and nights look like after this procedure. So Kleinman calls that the real meaning of illness. What is the life effect of this? We didn't discuss that. I think parents, you know, should be encouraged to sort of say, what are my capabilities personally to devote to this? What are the boundaries? And what feels right? And I think that those kinds of conversations never take place between the therapists and the families. And I think I think that conversation, or that question, that problem, is starting to be examined at least at Sick Kids or Holland Bloorview now. I've seen a few people talking about it recently. I haven't seen anything like that at the Ottawa Children's Treatment Centre. Maybe it is happening, I just don't know, because we've graduated from that. But it has been our experience that never did anyone say, what's it like with the amount of therapeutic goals that you're trying to address on a daily basis? How's that fitting in with your family life? How's your daughter dealing with that? How's your husband? Is he participating in the therapeutic goals? No? So how do you manage to make dinner and walk the dog? And maybe, you know, that could provoke floods of tears. I can't manage. It's too much. And if that's the case, then, you know, I think the therapist should help the parents sort of set some boundaries for what can you realistically contribute, you know, as the parent doing the therapy. What should the home goals be? maybe let's just rethink our goals here. It's just very difficult to do, though, when you think, God, if I don't do this every day, my son will never walk. And that's where I think, I was talking to you before about Kleinman's questions. Mm-hmm. And I think I was saying that I think that there is a cultural gap between medical professionals and the way that they carry out their professional job with your child, and the way that they communicate goals, set goals. Parents will tell you, you've just been handed all these physio exercises to do, and the first thing out of your mouth is, oh my God, how am I going to do this with the OT? The OT has just given me all these things to do. And the vision exercises I'm supposed to be doing. Like, each therapist has no idea what's going on in the expectations from other therapies. So there becomes a cultural misunderstanding between the professionals and the family. I have always been guided by Nicholas, because when he got to be a teenager, he has very few words he can actually say, but he could say, go away. So I'd come in his room and he's having a good time with his helper, and he'd look at me and say, go away, Mom. So we laugh about that in our family, but so partly it was him leading that way. But the other big thing is that I am a person who can figure out usually what to do in complicated situations if I put the architecture of an ethical idea around what I should do. And my idea was, as you said it, is that I should try to help Nicholas do what, or an approximation of what other kids at his age would be doing. And I started thinking that way when I looked at the other kids in the park climbing on the monkey bars. I'd take him out of his chair, I'd stick him against the monkey bars and try to persuade him to grab a hold. I tried to help him do what the other kids were doing. And so the idea of age appropriate has been a guiding force. But I didn't apply it only to him. I applied it to me and my husband too. Right. I believe that it's not right for me to be 65 years old and him to be 47 or whatever the age difference would be, and I am changing his trousers because he's incontinent. I don't believe that's appropriate. It's not appropriate for me, and I am simply not physically able to. But I also thought, I have brought this child up, and my husband and I deserve a retirement from what I will call the dependency work of keeping him alive, which is a 24-hour intensive awake job. So we have earned a retirement. That's one ethical stake in the ground, and I don't feel guilty about it whatsoever. I also think that we should be simply guided by what we're supposed to, how we're supposed to be, and what we're supposed to be doing in the context of the wider society and what we expect for our age. And I'm going to be 59 in a couple of weeks. So most 59-year-olds would not be doing the level of care that, a newborn would require. We're not supposed to be having babies and doing that intensive care for our family members. And some people do, I know parents who have chosen that path for themselves, and they they wouldn't have it any other way. And, you know, God bless them, but it's not what I would choose for myself or for our family, or especially for Nicholas. So he knows, though. At first, when he moved out, he was very nervous that there would be this fundamental abandonment, I guess. And then the first Christmas, I think the penny dropped at Christmas, because I slept there in the next room for 2 weeks when he first moved in. We were visited every day. But Christmas was sort of 4 months, 5 months later. And, you know, we ditched the caregivers, coming home for Christmas, but not sleeping over, because he knew that he would be uncomfortable in a normal bed. And we didn't have the highfalutin hospital bed mattresses, everything. He said, no, I want to go home and sleep in my bed, but can I come back tomorrow? Well, of course you can come back tomorrow. And the next day, you know, it was 2 weeks full-on family gatherings. And after that, he was sort of really okay with, you know, and now, can we come visit you? No, I am too busy. I'm too busy.
Right.
We'll have to fit it in the agenda another day. So, because he has lots of visitors, he goes to movies, because he can sit in his chair for maybe 3 or 4 hours at a time. He has lots of things on the go. He has somebody who comes over and plays video games with him. He goes to these courses for employment. So he is very busy, full life. And certainly he doesn't need or want his mother to be with him all the time.